What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show, part of the All-City Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Matez. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Tim Legler. Legs, only 2 more shows on theoretical basketball. Then the season is here. It is the week of the NBA season. I cannot wait for it.
2 more shows on theoretical basketball is too many, Adam. I think we both can agree on that. But that's all we have, man. That's all we got, particularly okay, so the other night, Friday night, I did NBA Countdown, which I haven't done a lot of countdowns since, probably the last 10 years. I did Countdown tonight for a preseason game, Lakers, Warriors, right? I'm kind of excited. Like, going to be on Countdown with Kendrick Perkins, Malika. This is going to be fun. And then we proceeded to lead into a game that had basically no one playing. I mean, the Warriors played some of their guys. Curry didn't play. Nobody from the Lakers played. And I'm just sitting there going, man, what are we doing right now? We're trying to make this team interesting. So I'm with you. I can't wait one more night and we start playing real games and breaking down real games that matter and getting a look at these combinations, these new combinations, new faces, new places, all those things, new coaches, rookies, when it really matters. So I'm with you, man. Sign me up for some real basketball. But I think today we got some fun content, given kind of our perspective on some things leading into the season. So it'd be fun to go back at the end of the year and see how close we were to some of these things.
Absolutely. So as we did on Friday, we looked at swing factor players in the Eastern Conference. And they could be stars, they could be role players, they could be secondary stars. Today, we're going to turn our attention to the Western Conference. And we got 4 lined up for you. Actually, we have 5, technically. We have Klay Thompson and Naji Marshall, both them big swing factors for the Dallas Mavericks. We have Chet Holmgren, obviously with the Thunder. Jamal Murray, can't wait to get to that one at the end. But we're going to start with Anthony Edwards, and this is your list, Legs. I asked you to put together players that you think are going to swing the title race out west. Anthony Edwards surprised me because I feel like we kind of know what he is, and he's already led a team to the Western Conference. So why did he make your list for swing factors?
Well, first I'm going to say this, and I love the way you just teed me up because I'm going to say this. I hope we don't know what he is. I hope we don't think Anthony Edwards is a finished product. That would be disappointing to me. I think we got ahead of ourselves last year a little bit with Anthony Edwards. I think in general, as a collective in the media, we got a little bit of ahead of ourselves, right? With the kind of the run he was on, and then winning the series against Denver in dramatic fashion, the way that they did. People were starting to make that that comparison that is so taboo in this line of work to Michael Jordan and all of those things. We got ahead of ourselves with it, right? And then they lose to Dallas, and that kind of shut everything down for the year with them. So here's why I said Anthony Edwards. If Anthony Edwards, and I think the talent is there, if he makes a significant leap this year, and in terms of just his ability to be super efficient in his mid-range game, to be a dominant fourth quarter closing player, like one of those unstoppable type forces in the fourth quarter, because he can get a shot from anywhere on the floor and he's making contested shots that matter late in games. If he continues to improve his passing and playmaking out of the attention he gets, I think these are all areas that are there for Anthony Edwards. A little bit more consistency with his deep ball because it makes him almost impossible to guard if he's hitting that. I think these are all areas in which he can improve. And if he does that, Adam, if he takes that leap, like he single-handedly can be a guy that just moves the needle in Minnesota's direction if he gets to the place that I'm talking about. Because I don't think he's a superstar yet. We throw that word around a little bit too often. I think he has the chance to become a superstar this season. Now, having said that, I don't know, and I know it's taboo in our business to say I don't know to anything, right? People that they don't want to hear that, and I rarely do. I can't sit here and say I know if I like their team better. I don't know if I do
Mhm.
or not. I need to see what it looks like with Julius Randle in those minutes that Carl Anthony Towns used to get. I need to see the impact that DiVincenzo has for these guys. I need to see Dillingham. And I think he's NBA ready, but let's see. Let's see once it actually matters what he does. So I don't know if I like their team better than last year. If it turns out I do, once I've seen enough of a sample size, and Anthony Edwards is doing the things I'm saying, like he can swing the pendulum in Minnesota's direction to such an extent, they potentially could be in the NBA Finals. No one would be surprised by that if Anthony Edwards takes this leap because he could be the most dominant player, in the Western Conference potentially. So that's why I put him first because I don't know if he'll get there. I think he has the potential to get there. I don't know if their team is ultimately going to be good enough. They've got the potential to be. So there's a lot of unknown, I feel like, with the Minnesota Timberwolves. And to me, it starts with how much can Anthony Edwards expand his game this coming season? And I believe that he's got great capability to do it. So they're just, to me, that's a big X factor in terms of how we view the Timberwolves.
One way we talked about him expanding his game last season throughout the course of the year was better bending the defense. He's a great scorer. He's explosive. He's hard to contain. But if you overload, if you throw a lot at him, I thought throughout the course of the year he got better at that trait. But I think when you talk about he's not a superstar, the difference to me is that superstars are able to use those things to your advantage. You're going to double me. You're going to bring two guys up top. Well, I'm going to maximize our window by dragging you away, or we're going to bend. You're going to bring the low man all the way over. I'm going to set the table so that when I get rid of the ball, we make something of it. And I think that to me is the next step for him because he already scores at a high level. His defense is extremely impressive. What he did to Jamal Murray was abusive in the playoffs last year. But to me, it's that part of like, okay, is there a defense you can throw at where he doesn't necessarily maximize the window? And I think that's the number one thing I want to see from him this year. And by the way, taking Cat out of the equation, I think actually puts the onus on him to do that even more this year because there's one less, great creator. I know Julius Randle can create, but it gives a little bit more responsibility to him to set the table. What do you think of that? What do you think he is in the development on that skill?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's really where the next level comes. What that involves is a level of maturity and poise and an ability to play at multiple speeds and paces so you can really see things and develop and anticipate the next action defensively where you're like a step ahead at all times. I think he's smart enough to do it. He's certainly competitive enough to do it. You and I have been talking about that, since the first time you and I spoke really a year ago. That's one of the things we love about him. He's got a look in his eyes that says he's just so hungry for greatness, hungry to win. And we both love that about him. I think he takes losing hard. And I think what's one of the characteristics that all these guys that have these qualities we're talking about that are MVPs, that win championships, that lead teams to those places, that's one thing they all have in common. I think they go home and they lose sleep when they don't win. And Anthony Edwards has that quality. So I think you're right. That's the part where you take your foot off the gas just a little bit in terms of your athletic ability. Because, we know he's got that at a totally different level than a lot of wings in this league. But now it's okay, slow things down, process what's happening, and really now be somebody that defenses and guys that are constructing defensive game plans on coaching staffs, they really don't know what to do with you now because now it's any sort of gap or attack or a single coverage or a mismatch or a bad matchup, he's going to get whatever he wants as a scorer. Well, now that next level comes there. In what ways is he a magnet for the defense that leads to easy offense for other people? That is absolutely part of the package I'm talking about. Look, he's close. He's very close, Adam, to being that guy that is just put him in there, first team All NBA, lock it in for the next 10 years. He's very close to getting there. And this might be the first year that he does that. And a lot of that is going to come with team success. And that's why I said, I just need to see what they look like once the season starts and they play some meaningful games. And I mean, I'm not talking 4 or 5 games. Give me 10, 15, 20 games. And I'm going to have a much better opinion because I want to see how Julius Randle incorporates himself playing alongside of Anthony Edwards and how different that's going to look from the way Karl Anthony Towns played. So it's a fascinating player, Anthony Edwards. I love watching him. I've got a lot of respect for him. And the arc that he has been on to this point in his career says that there are multiple layers still for him to achieve and add to his game. And I think he does that this year, in which it's more universally accepted how great the guy is. I think he gets there this year. But if those things don't tighten up, he won't. He'll be another guy that we say, hey, great athlete, great scorer, super entertaining, all those things, but not, one of those guys we look at as potential MVP candidate, first team all league, lock it in. He's going to be somewhere in one of those two places. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and says he gets there.
It's wild that he's only 23. And by the way, just turned 23 this summer. It's not like he's about to be 24. This is his age 23 season. And I feel like that is the age. I mean, I bet you there's statistical analysis of this, but I feel like that is the age where guys make the biggest leaps, tend to make the biggest leaps, because you're now, I mean, he's had a very mature body for quite a long time, but I feel like that is the age where you're just over the hump. You're not young anymore, but you're still fresh. And so that's a part of this to me, is you're talking about him not being a star. Part of me goes, he's the age most guys used to be drafted. He used to be drafted at age 23, right, and now he's going into it. So that's one reason I kind of am buying the Anthony Edwards stock. What do you make of that?
Well, listen, and people need to understand, and I've always said this, and this is kind of where I, come down on things. I think your prime years as an NBA player are 25 to 32. And he's not close to that yet. He's got a couple more years to get under his belt before he gets there. So that's scary to think about. If he's doing these kinds of things now and he hasn't, and the reason I think that is, Adam, when you get to that age, by the time, especially now, you're coming into the league at 18, 19. So you've got 6-7 years under your belt by the time you get to where I'm talking about, like 25, 26. You got 6-7 years under your belt. And you know what's happened by then? You've gotten your second contract. So not that you worry about money anyway coming out when you're one of these guys, but you've got so much money at that point. You're on your second deal. You've probably had some all-star game appearances. You've had some individual accolades. You probably made some all-league teams. You maybe gotten some MVP votes. Maybe you've even won a championship or competed for one. So a lot of the stuff that you wanted, like check the box, they're checked. And so when you get to be 25 to 31, the combination of physical maturity is at its best, in addition to, I think, you relax a little bit in terms of like pressing to prove who you are. Yeah. And I think that's important. Not to press. You still want to continue to show people, but you're not somebody every night, like that's something that's at the top of your agenda. Things happen a little more naturally for you. And then finally, I just think it gives you enough years to add the type of polish to your game and augment your game in the ways we're talking about around the margins. You're smarter. You're more professional. You probably got some of the stuff you're doing, off the court under control a little bit better by the time you get to be that age. Maybe you've had a child. There's just different things change your perspective on stuff. I just think he's still a couple of years away from even beginning to enter that period of time when all of that stuff slows down for you, right? So that's scary that he is this good at this age. And I thought he took an incredible leap a year ago. I think there's a couple more coming for him. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe he has that level of edge and intensity about him, because not everybody does. And he does. And that means, to me, he gets there. Now, we don't know ultimately how this trade's going to affect them. And if they take a step back, man, that's going to change some things in terms of how we view him going forward. Like, well, then how does he get himself to a place where he's contending for championships? Because that has to happen for us to really put him on the mantle that we ultimately think he can get to. You got to be contending every year. And if this isn't the right move for Minnesota for whatever reason, then now we're going to be sitting here at the end of the season saying, okay, what happens next for Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves? Because this wasn't the move that got them closer. But that remains to be seen. It might be.
DiVincenzo might also allow for him to take easier defensive assignments. I think last year he took on the Jamal Murray assignment because he wanted to. I think that competition brought out something in him that he wanted. But I even look at that and I go, you have Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, my guy, and Dante DiVincenzo. Those are three phenomenal perimeter defenders. And when you get into a playoffs, sometimes whether you want that challenge or not, sometimes it's not nice not to have to take it for 4 quarters. And that might be something that helps him as well. And lastly, Legs, he leads the NBA in bank shots. I love that. It's just a random stat, but I love that he is bringing the bank shot back. Used to be a great shot. A lot of guys don't take it now. He's like twice as many as anybody else in the NBA.
I had my 2-year-old in my pool yesterday, lifting him up with my basketball goal that I've got on the pool, and I was having him work on nothing but bank shots.
Just banks, baby.
And just kept saying it over and over, bank shot, bank shot. He just, they're 2 feet away, but he's just using that square because it is a really important component. Not a lot of guys go to it. I love the guys that go to it from places I would never have dreamed of banking a ball, Westbrook actually takes some weird angles on bank shots sometimes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I know it's intentional. And I'm like, what? I never would have dreamt of doing it. So you're right. Anthony Edwards utilizes that in his game. I'm excited for him, man, this year. I mean, he's just, I think he represents everything you want in your top guy. And now he just has to refine things, continue to add. And I'm curious to see what Minnesota looks like once we get started.
All right, let's take our first break. While we're taking our break, hop in the chat. Let us know, what do you predict for Anthony Edwards this year? It can be a statistical prediction. It can be just what you think is going to happen with the Timberwolves. Let us know in the chat. And when we come back on the other side, we're going to talk a little Dallas Mavericks. But first, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. If you want to go to an NBA game this week, opening night, where are you going to get your tickets? Of course, the Game Time app. They have a great interface. I think the best user experience in all of like the ticket buying apps at different places, because they have that all-in price feature right on the top right. You just click on that and it'll tell you exactly what the price is going to be for the ticket at the checkout. No surprise fees at the last second. So you think your tickets are going to be $100. You get to check out, they're $200. Nope. All-in pricing will tell you your final dollar amount of what you're going to pay. They also tell you all the different events that are coming up. So if it's not a basketball game, you just want to see what's going on in your neck of the woods over the weekend, you could bring that up and it'll tell you. And then, of course, they have those last-minute ticket prices, flash deals, zone deals, and a whole bunch of other features that make it really easy to buy your ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and help us out. Use the promo code ALLNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code ALLNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also want to tell you about Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. They probably even have a style in your favorite team's colors. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. So head to shadyrays.com and use the code AC35 for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Again, using our promo code, guys, helps a lot. We know you hear about our products. You want to check them out. Use our code AC35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, back here, segment 2 of the All NBA show. I'm with Tim Legler. You put 2 players on your list for the Dallas Mavericks, Klay Thompson and Naji Marshall. So real quick, why are both of them on the list for you here?
Well, because I just didn't think I should leave one off, because I think that they're both equally important in different ways to this team. And look, this team went to the finals a year ago. So things broke their way for that to happen. They also went out and earned it. They've got, a guy that's arguably the most unstoppable offensive force in the league. And Kyrie next to him, and they really gelled last year. So the talent is there. I love the additions they made. They get to the finals. They took advantage of some things, I think, to get there, but they did. A lot of people probably are not going to pick them to return to the finals or win a championship. And I look at what they added, and I just think they upgraded in the areas that they needed to significantly. Klay Thompson, and look, neither one of these guys shot the ball very well at all in the preseason. I'm not going to put too much stock in that. New team, new place. Everything feels a little bit different, and it's preseason. Let's see what happens in the regular season. Klay Thompson's got to shoot a lot better than he did in the preseason. I can tell you that, for what I'm saying to be true. I just think the level of shooter that he is such an upgrade over the guys that were taking the same shots that he's going to get last year. And Naji Marshall, what he's going to ultimately do in eating up minutes defensively and taking on that role with the minutes he's going to eat up. He's also a guy that improved his three-point shooting pretty dramatically last year. He still doesn't take a lot. His shot attempts are going to be higher this year than any of his career. And so if he did improve last year, and the numbers indicated he did, he's career 31. He was 38 last year, but it's just not a big enough sample size. His sample size is going to go up this year. So if he did actually improve in any way, mechanically or just his confidence or whatever it may be, and he shoots that percentage, that's going to be all they're going to need out of him because of what he's going to do defensively. And then Klay Thompson, he's just got to be a guy that's got to be close to 40 or north of 40 from the three because he's going to get really good looks. And if you're talking about a team that went to the finals, Adam, and they got those two guys back, Kyrie and Luka, they've got that same core of guys they added. They've got the young rim runners. They've got young talent around those two guys, and they go out and they upgrade, 40 to 50 minutes a night at those two spots. That's very significant to me. So I think that's why I think it's critical that both of those guys have the kind of years that I expect. And if they do, Dallas can win the Western Conference again and get back to the finals. I don't think a lot of people are going to pick him to do that. But if Klay Thompson has a year which he shoots 44, 45% from the field, close to 40 from the three, you think that's too high? It might be. But I think his shot selection is going to be better on this team than it was in Golden State, when he was still kind of holding on to who he used to be in that uniform. I think it's going to be different here. He made the change. He knows what he's going into. He knows there's two guys at the top of the food chain that are ball dominant guys. I think the shots he get are going to be better. He's going to be a little bit more selective with it. I think his percentages can come up a few percentage points, and I think he can, be in that 40% range from the three as shooting a high volume of threes. If he does that, then that's a win-win big time for Dallas and for Klay Thompson.
So Luka can score in bunches and get the team scoring in bunches. Kyrie can get red hot and score in bunches. Klay Thompson represents another layer of guy that just gets hot. I mean, this is the Klay Thompson experience. He can go cold for extended periods of time. He can kind of blend in for periods. But when he gets hot, it's 4 or 5 threes in a row in a quarter. And I look at that and I go, that was a hallmark of the Warriors in their heyday, that they just had these runs, these 5-minute stretches where the game was over because it was a 20-3 run and there was no coming back from it. I think that is one of the things he's going to bring to this team. I don't know if it'll be consistency, but I think the Mavs might have the mantle this year. I mean, the Celtics are going to have it as well because they're just a phenomenal team. But those two teams to me might have the biggest haymaker punch, and you just don't know when it's going to come. But I think that's one of the things he brings to the team is Mavs will have a lot of these 12-0 runs, 20-5 runs that just break a team's back.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree with you. He's good, and he can get that hot on given nights at a level unlike anything they had on the roster last year outside of the top two guys. And that's what Klay Thompson can do. Now he's going to have other nights. Look, he's not the same. We know that. He's not as efficient as he used to be. And he's going to have also not only nights, he's going to have stretches of games where he goes 3 games and really shoots poorly from the field. That's what we expect now from Klay Thompson. But again, I think when you just increase the quality of shot for a guy with a stroke this good, I still think he's got a lot of highly efficient nights in him. I don't think he's toast. He's not the same defender he was, but he's not a coffee table either. He's still a guy that can be more than adequate defensively. He's not a stopper. Combined with Naji Marshall, though, who can really defend. And again, I'm curious to see what his 3-point numbers look like with a higher volume. I obviously really like the Dallas Mavericks, but I don't know that they are going to get back to the finals if they don't have. And also, I could throw Quentin Grimes in this conversation as well. I mean, that's another addition, another guy that guards and shoots it. He's going to play a lot of minutes. I could have had a 3-headed monster for this answer, honestly. Quentin Grimes is very important to them too, as another guy that can get hot and can guard. So you're not playing guys at the expense of the other end of the floor. I think they had some guys last year that was the case. Either way, some guys were just offensive players. Some guys were just better defensively, and then they really hurt them on the other end of the floor. I don't think any of these 3 guys hurt them on either end. All 3 guys can guard adequately, and all 3 guys can score. And I think that's why the depth of the Dallas Mavericks to me is more impressive than it was a year ago.
With on Naji Marshall, one thing about him is he's one of the toughest dudes in the NBA. Like, I don't know, basketball tough, I think he's tough, but I think outside of that, I've just have been told he's a very almost imposing, intimidating figure because he is not afraid of anything or anyone. And I think that's it's important to have somebody like that on your roster. What do you think? How important and how much can one player bring toughness to a unit? Not that Dallas wasn't tough last year, but I don't know that I would have given him toughness. Like said, oh, that's a tough team. How much can one player change that?
He could change it a lot because I think I love this question because there are guys I fell into that category I played with and played against, and you can go up and down the league now and see guys dotted throughout the league on certain rosters. It matters. It changes the tone of physicality about your team when you have guys that play the way they do and are serious in their approach to what they're doing, as Naji Marshall is. And I think that's something that they could use because I don't know that we'd look at that team necessarily, like you said, and say that's a tough group. I don't know that that word would come to mind for the Dallas Mavericks. They're very, very, very talented, and they're led by a guy there's like no real answer for defensively in Luka that sets the whole table. But now you go out and you add a guy like this that's sort of an enforcer type wing defender. It matters a lot in terms of the carryover to other role players on their roster and their commitment to it, how hard they work in the weight room, how serious they are in their approach every day when they walk in the building. I think it matters.
Yeah. Let's move on now to the next team we're going to talk about, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder and their swing factor. We're hitting the contenders here, or at least four of the contenders. Chet Holmgren, another surprise, kind of like you had with Anthony Edwards, because I feel like Chet Holmgren, I kind of know what we're getting out of him, even though he only had one season under his belt. So why did he make your list here as a swing factor?
Well, and I think we're gonna have to wait a little while for what I'm about to say to really be seen or come true because of the injury to Hartenstein. But I think ultimately what Isaiah Hartenstein is going to bring for Chet Holmgren is this. And I actually already did a breakdown on this from the preseason of some plays where Isaiah Hartenstein was on the floor with Chet, and Isaiah Hartenstein was the guy that was gobbling up the bigger guys on the floor with the physical contact and the wrestling matches on the glass. That was Chet Holmgren last year. And I could go back and show you a lot of film where Chet Holmgren was bullied because of his lack of just brawn and weight. He's athletic and he's long and certainly, a very, very good team defender and did a very good job on the boards as a rookie. You think about, you add Hartenstein to the mix, eating up that contact means that Chet Holmgren a lot of times is going to be roaming more freely on the offensive and defensive glass. I think that's something we're going to notice. He's going to be getting more unencumbered defensive rebounds that are going to lead to faster offense for Oklahoma City. I think he's going to have better offensive rebounding opportunities because the biggest guy in the court is going to be dealing with Hartenstein. And that's going to give Chet Holmgren some freer runs to the rim against guys that are more built like he is. And I think you're going to see all that length and athletic ability really blossom this year in ways that it did a year ago. I don't know if there'll be some huge spike in his numbers because he's still playing with, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams. Like, you bring Hartenstein into the mix, who's going to get touches, right? They have some three-point shooters on that team. Caruso's in the mix now. I don't know that his numbers go crazy. I just think watching him will be more impactful than it was a year ago, more nights. And I think that's the Isaiah Hartenstein effect on Chet Holmgren, playing more, which should be his natural position, which is playing the 4 in the NBA. And I think he's going to win a lot of those matchups physically and be able to do things physically that were a little bit harder for him against centers and probably not wear him out as much too. So, but we're not going to see that. I don't know how long Hartenstein's out. I believe like 6 weeks or something is what they said. Yeah. So we're going to have to wait a little while to see this. But if that's the case, and Chet Holmgren is able to increase his impact in that regard on a team that was the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, you can see what that could lead to. And a lot of people are going to pick Oklahoma City to be in the finals. That's not going to surprise me at all. I think Chet Holmgren is a big reason why he has to continue to grow, and I think that you're going to see that this year, being in a position that's more natural to him at the NBA level.
You think his 3-point rate will skyrocket this year when he's playing more 4? Because just you think about where does he stand on the court. I think Ihart's a lot of the pick and roll threat there, so he's rolling to the rim. Do you think he's going to be a guy that is going to be taking more? I think he took 4 per game last year. Is that number going to go up a lot?
Yeah, I think it will, and I think what you're saying is, Hartenstein is going to be the pick dive guy,
Yeah.
and so to play that with Shea and Hartenstein, right, it's going to require multiple guys to engage in the ball, and then you're going to have a weak side guy cover the slip by Hartenstein. Well, that used to be Holmgren on that slip or pick and pop. Now Holmgren's in the next slot over. So when Hartenstein dives and two guys are on Shea and one guy has to come from the weak side to pick up Hartenstein on the dive, Holmgren's the guy that's going to be rotating like from the wing to the top of the key, catching the ball and getting a lot more space and time to toe it up. And he's already very, very high percentage shooter all over the floor. He's very selective in when he shoots. I think those numbers do go up, and I think his 3-point percentage is going to be good enough that maybe that's where the main spike in his offense comes from. In addition, I think to getting more active on the offensive glass in his totality of putbacks over the course of the season. It's not something that's like, he's not going to average 5 more points a game because of offensive rebounds, but you don't have to. If you're getting an extra opportunity a game for a putback, there's 2 points right there. And over the course of a season, it adds up because some nights he might have 5, 6, 7 offensive rebounds. I think that's going to happen for Chet Holmgren this year.
I think that's an important part of it, because one of the things with the Porzingises of the world, some of these skinnier, longer bodies players, is one way you match up with them is just put a smaller player on them and say, you know what, treat him like a guard, a really tall guard. You're not going to block his shot at the perimeter, but you can just put him there. And I think that's the biggest way you punish him, is say, if you're going to do that and just play 4 smalls, 1 big guarding Hartenstein, well, then we're going to grab all the boards. And I'm not sure if that's in his wheelhouse or not, but we'll see it. One thing I know he prides himself on is his handle. And we see it every summer. He's working on it. He actually has a great handle. To his credit, he had a great handle last year, but did not overuse it. But I wonder if that's a part of his game that could become like just a little bit more. Okay, year 2, let's give him a few more opportunities to dribble, face up, dribble, and try to create. I think that's a part of his game where if he becomes the best version of himself individually 5 years from now, that's a big part of his game. And if that's the case, this year we see more of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think it's really fair in looking for that as the season progresses. There's not much, Adam, that you can dissect about Oklahoma City that you don't love.
Yep.
So, I don't think if you took a general consensus out of everybody in our line of work that has to make predictions on stuff like this before the season, I think I might be surprised if Oklahoma City doesn't get the most votes to go to the finals. I just think they're right. I just think look at the year they had a year ago, and I at no point did I really buy into them getting to the finals a year ago, despite their regular season success. We talked about it a lot, just how young they were to take that step, in 3 rounds in the Western Conference against that level competition. I didn't see that as likely. You go out and you address critical needs, got bigger. You added another guy. You talk about adding like toughness into your locker room and you bring in Alex Caruso. It seems like all of the components are there, in addition to that youth that we talked about as a detriment a year ago in terms of getting to the finals. Well, they're all just 1 year older, 1 year more mature, 1 year hungrier because of the way their season ended a year ago. Add it all up, and I think they're going to be the consensus pick to get to the finals.
Yeah, I think so too. And one last thing on him handling the ball more. One thing that Denver is really good at, those inverted pick and rolls. Because if you run a 1-5 pick and roll, if Chet's at the center position, a 1-5 pick and roll, Oklahoma City doesn't really struggle generate switches, but teams can get around that. When you invert it, it puts everybody in the opposite positions. All of a sudden, now your guard is showing on screens. They're not used to doing that. They're not great at doing that. And I just look at it again. I don't think that becomes a staple of your offense. They have their staples in their offense, but that's another wrinkle that could just make it even more impossible not to switch. And we all know how good Shea is when he gets a switch. I mean, he just kills whoever is trying to guard him on those switches. So it's something I'd be curious to see if they run for him this year. Let's get to our last player, which is Jamal Murray. I've been asking, why are these players on your list? But I know the answer to Jamal. There's no player in the NBA that is better at their peak and worse at their average, in my opinion, than Jamal Murray. And I have to imagine that's how you feel as well, that he's on this list, because if you get the best version of him, forget all the noise. Denver's a contender, and they might even be a favorite. But if he's his average all year, it might be kind of tough. Is that more or less the thinking?
That's basically it. And I think so I'm going to start this answer by asking you a question. Do you agree with me that it's pretty clear the top three teams in the Western Conference are Oklahoma City, Dallas, and Minnesota?
I think so. I mean, I give Denver and I even give Phoenix a little bit of a nod here to enter that. I would not be surprised if either of those teams were in it, but if I were to pick, I would pick those three teams you just mentioned.
Okay, same. So would I. And the reason I put Jamal Murray on this list because he is that important in whether Denver breaks into that group. Is it going to be Denver? Is it going to be Phoenix? So I actually am really excited to see because, and I'm calling their first game against the Clippers on Wednesday night. So I'm so glad I'm going to see them early in the season. Yeah, and ESPN doubleheader Wednesday. I'll be doing the second game with Dave Pasch. Really excited about that and seeing Phoenix because I just felt like Phoenix of the teams that have like that top talent, like at the top of their roster in this league. I felt like they were probably as far away from what they could be at their best as anybody in the league last year. So I can't wait to see a new version, new coach, add some new pieces. I think better chemistry with Durant, Booker, and Beal, like all of that stuff. So maybe it's Denver. Maybe it's Phoenix. Am I leaving anybody out? Hey, maybe it's Memphis that gets into that group.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a big wild card X factor, I think, in the Western Conference. Is New Orleans, did they get it all together this year? Like, I don't know who that's going to be, but I've said to you from the beginning about the Denver Nuggets, they didn't feel like a one championship group to me. It just didn't. They got the best player in the league. They had youth at their other pieces with enough maturity, but still young, not super beat up, great chemistry, and led by, Jokic and his ability to read defenses and run everything through him, and everything just fit. So if I believe that they can still contend, I've got to believe Jamal Murray is going to be the main reason why, because he's going to be closer to the version of himself that season than he was at times when he's either limited or hobbled or whatever it may be over the last couple of years. He's that important because he's that good, and the combination of he and Jokic together is that difficult for defenses to deal with, and it allows everybody else in their starting lineup to sort of stay in their lane and do what they do when Jamal Murray is really humming and cooking offensively. So I guess it comes down to this, Adam. Do you think we see that version for the most part? Not all the time. He might even be banged up even going in. Yeah. But for the most part, do we see the better version of Jamal Murray this year to the extent Denver is still a contender in the Western Conference?
I think we're going to see it earlier than ever before this year because I think Jamal Murray knows that this is, everybody's talked about what an awful playoffs he had. Everybody's talked about what an awful Olympics he's had. Like, he has the most criticism coming his way of his entire career. So I think he is going to be dialed in. If you look at his career numbers, October and November are atrocious. I think it's like 14 points a game or something like that he averages in those months. And then as the season goes on, he gets better and better. I think that this year he comes out of the gate really, really strong. The question is, can he sustain that? Because another part of Jamal Murray's career so far is that he has gotten injured at some point in the season every season for the last 4 or 5. So I look at that and I go, that is the big question now is he in shape, motivated, and has he worked on his body over the years enough to be able to sustain 82 games? It's really tough for players to do that. But what I think, Legs, is underrated about Jamal Murray's game, he is really, really, really good at reading the court. And you run the two-man action as much as they do, you're going to become elite at reading the court. And Jokic gets the lion's share of the credit, rightfully so, one of the smartest players of all time. But when those two are at their best, they're both reading the court in sync together, and they're both making the plays. And Jamal Murray's a huge part of that. Think about the bubble. Think about the finals and the conference finals the year they won the title. Those two teams were a pick your poison. No matter what you did, they both read it in real time, lightning quick, and got baskets out of it. And I think that when people often will say the shot, the handle, you break it down into that. How you read the court is as important, if not more important than all of those. And at his best, he's as good as anyone.
That's a great point. I've always kind of admired his basketball IQ, and I think he's very decisive their whole team is decisive. It's what kind of makes them who they are offensively and why they're so fun to watch. And their IQ is so high in their collective when they're playing at their best. So the question just is how many nights, how frequently can Jamal Murray get there? And then maybe even more importantly than that, Adam, is he feeling that way and in that state of mind physically and mentally April 15th, right?
Yeah.
That's what really we're talking about here. That's when it's going to matter. That's when you're going to have him against the number of teams you're going to have to beat in the Western Conference. I personally don't think the contending days are over for the Denver Nuggets. I still think because of who they are and their best player, that gives you a chance every night. But Jamal Murray gives you a chance not to just be competitive in the league. They give you a chance to potentially win the whole damn thing because playing them in a best of 7, if he's healthy and in a good state and in a good rhythm, I mean, you could pick them against any team, any of those top 3 teams that I just mentioned. And in fact, you probably would pick Denver against those teams in a best of 7 if Jamal Murray gets to the playoffs. And at the start of the playoffs, he's not hobbled by anything physically. We're not talking about anything he's dealing with or, on a bad night, we say, well, remember, he's dealing with such and such. No, just take that out of the equation. That's not part of the vernacular. It's just Jamal Murray healthy and playing. Then Denver still has a great chance. And I think he's going to get there. I also think he's pretty determined to do it. I think he's probably been hearing a lot of the noise, man. And I think he's going to, he's going to show, I think, how much he's been paying attention and what he wants to prove this year. Because he's too young to just now, from this point on, just sort of, descend into mediocrity, a handful of years down the road. He's still got a lot of years left, I think, in this league to play at a really high level. Important that he gets this back on track this year, because then Denver is a team we'll be talking about all season.
Let me ask you one last question on him. He ranked 64th in 3-point field goal attempts last year. 64th. He's a great 3-point shooter. He shot 42% last year, but the volume is always low. And I think this is a superstar trait. Superstars are scoring from all over. He's a 3-level scorer, but Denver doesn't have a lot of shooting. Do you think he needs to up his 3-point attempts this year? And if so, where do those threes come from?
I'm not sure that he does, because I think to do that, you take away the middle area of the floor, which is so good at. He's such a good mid-range pull-up jump shooter. And the way that they run their ball screens and where they run them, they run a lot of ball screens inside the 3-point line with Jokic. They're not all extended out 30 feet on the floor, where a lot of guards like to come off of that and pull, or if the guy goes under, they'll stop and pull. Denver runs theirs a little bit tighter. And it's because of Jamal Murray's ability, the way he can control his body and the ball to come off of those and get just that little bit of separation for the lean back 18-footer. It's a big part of his game. So I think, look, if it organically happens because player X is getting more attention, or they're just the way the teams are guarding them and it's there, or he's being dared to shoot that shot, take it, because he's got a high likelihood he's going to make that shot. But I don't want him necessarily going into the season thinking he needs to change that, because that could take away one of his main strengths, which is his ability to shoot the ball from 15 to 21 feet.
I think I actually agree with you on that one. I think his 3-point rate is about right, about what it should be. And this year I want to see him get to the rim. He actually got to the rim better his first 3 seasons. Since the injury, naturally, he's gotten to the rim a little bit less, but I think that his explosiveness and some of the strength in his legs is back. Maybe not to where it was before the injury, but better than it was in the last 2 years. And I want to see him get to the rim and finish and dunk the ball. By the way, I think he had 19 dunks last year. I'd love to see that number get up to like 30, 40. That just tells you the explosiveness is getting back. We had one super chat, James. What was it? I saw it come in. I think it's Basketball Cthulhu once again. He always gives us a super chat.
That's our guy.
It's Basketball Cthulhu once again. Basketball Cthulhu wonders if Ant's commitment to the game will be questioned if he doesn't take that leap. And plus the football quote the other day. Sadly, he can't pull a Neon Dion because football plus b-ball overlap more than basketball.
So, interesting one here. Did you see that quote, by the way, where he said, if I win a title in the next 4 or 5 years, I'm going to play basketball?
Yeah. I did see that.
Yeah. I took that. Oh, wow. James going all over the screen there. Look at our super chat is just floating around.
It's an extra long one. I'm sorry, guys.
It's all good. So, Legs, real quick, I don't know if Ant's commitment. Ant competes, man. One thing I'll say is guys can have other hobbies in the NBA. Guys can have other interests. I care about if you compete, if you're focused, you execute. And that guy, you can question a lot of people's competition level. He competes every night to me.
Yeah, I don't think you'll question his commitment. Look, if you're saying, I think the question was if he doesn't add the things we were talking about, a little bit of that refinement. Listen, there are a lot of guys historically in this league that were great athletes and showed a lot early and couldn't get there just because not everybody can. It's not guaranteed, no matter how much you work on certain aspects of your game, that you're going to necessarily reach elite level in those things. Not everybody can do that. So I don't think it's going to be for lack of effort or lack of trying, because I think Anthony Edwards is going to do that. I think he's committed to do that. And it's just a matter of now, let's sit back and wait and see, can he pull it off? Because not everybody does. Some guys, they get to a certain level and and it's still a really high level, and then they kind of stay there because they're really good at that, and that's good enough to be one of the better players in the league and to be on good teams and all that stuff. That's not what we're talking about with him, and I don't think it's going to be a question of him, because number one, I think he will get there, and two, I just think regardless, it's not going to be because he's not putting the time in.
All right, let's wrap up. Great show today. A lot of fun, by the way, talking about these swing factors. Tomorrow, our last show of Theoretical Basketball, and we're going to be breaking down some superlatives. Best starting five, best duos, best passers, a whole bunch of other topics, as well as talking about who we think has the inside track on All NBA this year. And it's our last predictive episode. After that, Wednesday's show is going to be on the actual games. I can't wait for that one. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. If you're new, we're doing this 4 times a week. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment and like down below for the algorithm. Help us grow this show. Hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you next time.
We all silly like the mayor.
Alrighty.